So that's Shay, and I'm Erin, and we're from the Mary and Jesus Show podcast, and we're here today to speak to you about accepting our spiritual selves, and possibly that could help you accept your spiritual self. Please, please, we gotta be serious.
Okay, guys, for cereals. I don't know, I'm so nervous and anxious, I don't know what I'm doing. So, see, this is why I just gotta wing it.
Okay, swing it.
Because, I don't understand all this stuff, so. Accepting our spiritual selves. It's hard to even talk about because we're all in such different parts of our spiritual journey. Some people might just have awakened to their spiritual side. Some might have already fully embraced it, and everything in between. And, some people might not even know their spiritual side, or who knows? Who knows where you are? So I just think it's actually quite difficult to, focus on one perspective when we talk about this kind of a thing, because everybody is so unique. And I think that's in itself is a big part of accepting your spiritual self, is to recognize that what you're going through or what you're learning about yourself is unique to you. And we often compare ourselves to the external, right? We compare ourselves to our friends and our families and maybe people that are in the same religion as us, and we can often try to mold ourselves either from the way they are, or we can get freaked out when we see that we are different than them. And so I think one of the first cores for all this stuff we're talking about is to make sure that you recognize that it's your journey, and as much as you can come to these groups or talk to other people about it or read books, in the end it's always going to be about you and the way you're experiencing things. And the spiritual realm, whatever you might think it is or whatever it is to you, it knows who you are. It knows how to communicate with you. And so once you start asking for messages or guidance, it will know how to guide you. It's not going to be someone else guiding you per se, but if that person speaks to you in a certain way and you feel the truth in their words, then maybe that is how the universe has chosen to guide you. I don't know.
Well, then that leads me on to thinking about how we wrote in here, how I wrote in here, about meeting, even though the journeys are so different, and like you said, that we're on such different parts of our journeys, one thing that I think will always remain true is building your faith and your intuition. Because I find that when you're earlier on in that journey, it can be hard to trust and know when you are being guided by your higher self. And you can have a lot of doubts. And I think it's fine, on one hand, to accept that you have these doubts because you're learning and it's new. It could be new. And just to really trust the process. And just to keep, I think what's really worked for the two of us, at least, I can't speak for anyone else, is to go in with no expectations. And when you're not, looking, because I found that that's what happened with me, is I was always looking for a very particular sign, and it made me miss a lot of other signs. And yeah, just being open.
Yeah, being open is really important, because if we knew the path we had to walk on, if we could just see it right in front of us clear as day, it'd be easy and everybody would already have done it. Right? So it's about recognizing that you're on a different path. You're on a path that nobody has ever walked before. And so you need to look for signs of trails in places you've never looked before. You need to just exactly that, have no expectations. You might not even be on the path you're supposed to be on right now. Like, I don't know. You obviously you are, because it's the only path there is, but you got to be open to other signs for sure. Just open to everything.
However, I would like to add on, like, being down, like, the quote-unquote wrong path. Like, it's always going to lead you back.
Yes.
Like, it's a part of the learning process.
Yes, there's no such thing as the wrong path. It just can feel like that. And because it feels like that, that's a sign, right? You have to know what you don't want. Or you have to have something to know you don't want it, right? So I think one thing I would like to talk about is just my idea of what I have connected with, like accepting my spiritual self. There's this physical world that we're all part of and we all share together, but then there's something above, something that I think has a lot to do with consciousness. And I truly believe that everybody, every individual has their exact being already existing in this higher realm. And we simply are disconnected from it. You know, we connect to our phones, we connect to, TV. TV is so bad, honestly. But we connect to these devices and we like feel detached even from each other. We feel detached from Mother Nature. And all of these things lead to us being detached from our higher selves, our spiritual selves. And so when we're trying to accept them and accept our spiritual selves, I think it's important to really only accept the things that resonate with you, because it's just you trying to teach yourself. So if you hear something from someone else, and maybe it's like really overly religious, or it's just totally against what you believe, and you don't really resonate with it, then just let that teach you something. Let that teach you that that's not something for you, right? And all this, like, resonating things, like, it's your intuition telling you what's right for you. And as you learn to trust it and accept it, it gets better. Like, it grows. Your connection grows. And you'll start to heal. And the connection between you and your spiritual self will heal. I don't know.
Well, I think that's good. And I think as well, like, talking about the relationship between you and your spiritual self, like, you can feel quite isolated at times. I think especially if you are surrounded by a lot of people who have a specific doctrine that they follow, or belief system that they follow, or even like lack of belief, it can feel lonely.
Yeah, especially if it's your friends and family.
Yes, but I think that as long as you trust the process, and like, this sounds corny, but like staying true to yourself and your beliefs, like, the people that are meant to be surrounded by you will stay or will come into your life, and those that don't serve you or are just, not willing to be open to ideas, like, they'll just, kind of go to the side a bit. And it's definitely a hard process, but I think it's very integral to accepting your spiritual self and finding a community of people that don't necessarily believe every single thing that you believe, because then how can you grow, but that are open to different perspectives, that you can bounce ideas off of each other, and then both or all of you can continue to grow your spiritual selves together. I think that's very important. And I think that's like a part of like what we're trying to do. But I'm sure like anybody else that would be that's present can feel similarly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you're true to yourself, you will find your people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it might not feel like it in the beginning, but I was just thinking, it's like, would you rather be accepted for who you aren't, or would you rather be a little more patient and be accepted for who you are?
Mm-hmm.
As long as you hide from your truths, you won't be able to heal. So you might be able to gain, that energy and the light from your community, but you're going to need to be recharged every day, because you're also going to be fighting the fact that you don't know who you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So step one is just to accept yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even though we're talking about accepting our spiritual selves, perhaps what we should have said first is that you got to kind of forget about the spiritual side of things and accept everything else about yourself too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
accept every mistake you've ever made, accept every thing that you think you've done wrong. Accept it. You did it. It's a thing. Learn from it, move forward, right? Like,
It's the same as like even making, or again, like we were talking about earlier, about going down like this wrong path of spirituality. It's like you wouldn't be who you are today without those mistakes.
exactly.
And though some are arguably bigger mistakes than others, they were all a part of the plan, I think.
Mm. Yeah, I say the word mistakes, but I really don't like it. I always prefer to use the word lessons. They're only mistakes if you don't learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a big mistake. But maybe the big mistake is that you ended up here listening to this, and you'll learn something, something valuable.
Yeah.
Or just anything, right? You're here now, and that's what's important. Where you're ready to start forgiving yourself and understanding more.
And I find that though this is kind of like the base, like kind of not even step one, I feel like down the line, like learning how to forgive yourself and accept yourself for who you are, you can do that for other people. And even though I find some people, if you're like me, maybe you were able to forgive others, but you weren't able to forgive yourself. But I find that when you are able to forgive and accept yourself completely and wholly, the amount that you can do for other people is so much greater.
Mm.
And I know I keep bringing it back to like other people in community, but that is kind of like what I find that's not the end goal, but
Well,
where you'll be eventually
it
led.
becomes natural.
Yes.
It becomes natural.
Yes.
As soon as you accept yourself, forgive yourself, and start healing yourself, you start to see the suffering in the world for what it really is, and you can't not want to help them. Like, and then a whole new set of trauma comes in, not being able to help people properly.
Yeah.
But you do help. You do help. Just existing and being willing to listen to people. That's all that you really need to do in the beginning.
Because through that, not only will you be accepting your own spiritual self, but perhaps you could be helping them accept their spiritual self, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of beautiful things can come from that.
Yeah, I think it's really important when you start talking about your ideas with other people to make sure that they are people that will listen.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to agree. They don't need to, change to your perspective. But you want to find people that will listen.
Yes.
because that will reshape your ideas, reform your ideas. It's kind of like you don't know how well you know something until you try to teach it. But then when you have to teach it to someone else, you're like, oh, I didn't really understand this. I need to learn this one part more or something, right? And talking to people does that too, right? Getting out there and not being afraid to share your ideas. I think it's a very important part of self-acceptance. And then not letting their reaction change you. Like, I mean, don't be totally closed off to their words, of course.
Take it into consideration.
Yeah, take it into consideration, and then just know that you have the ability to hold on to what's true for you, right? Always. You're the one that decides what information gets stored and what you build off of. So, one other thing to talk about is that, or I think that we should talk about at least before it ends here. We're running a bit over our 15, but that's okay because I did some screaming in the beginning. Is when you're doing this sort of balancing act that we all have to do these days as we learn our spiritual side, we have to sort of balance between being very spiritually minded and being very sort of grounded and physically, like physically here. For a really simple example, if I'm in a large group of people and I'm feeling like I'm vibrating a little bit extra high and my mind is kind of all over the place, I consider that spiritual for me, by the way. I'm just kind of aware of a lot of things going on. And if I'm like that in a group of people, I can't handle it. Like, I hear what everybody is saying, and I'm trying to listen to everything, and it gets really challenging for me, and I sometimes just like have to excuse myself. But lately, since I've been learning about it, I've been just grounding myself by breathing, like really focusing on my breathing, not listening, taking my mind back from its higher state or whatever it might be, and just coming back to the physical and really focusing on, my feet on the ground and my breath. And I feel quite a bit calmer almost immediately, and I'm able to just pick and choose the conversations, and I'm not thinking about the consciousness of the universe. and so that's something that I have to do almost every day, is find this balance that I want to be at, right? It's all about kind of being able to control yourself and being able to go to the higher vibrations, and then also being okay when you go down to the lower vibrations, because anytime you can go back up, right? So it's starting to learn that control too. All right, I think that was the last thing I wanted to talk about. Do you have any closing ideas, closing thoughts?
No, I just think that just keep at it. Just never give in. It may seem tempting at first to kind of go back to your kind of routine ways, especially if you're early on in your journey. But it's really just about accepting your faults, quote unquote, and just keep building your faith, truly, honestly, and community, and it will all fall into place a lot sooner than you'll think. Yeah.
Okay, bye.